If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I am super picky about romance. If you haven't been watching this channel for a while, hi, I'm Rose, I am at home, and today I'm gonna talk about my top 5 books with romance that aren't necessarily romance books, that are books that the picky reader who is looking for something romantic to read for Valentine's Day can still enjoy. So I'm gonna jump straight in right now. So the first category I'm gonna go with is literary fiction, and this is a beautiful story that I think maybe not a romance, but is really built around the love life of the main character. And it is Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. I love this book. It's the one thing, I don't teach 11th grade anymore, but when I taught 11th grade, I taught this book, and it was one of my favorite things about teaching 11th grade. It is such a beautiful story. If you haven't read it or don't know about it, it is the story of a woman named Janie, and it follows her from when she is 5 years old through multiple marriages, through multiple loves, from the falling in love to the disintegration of love to all of the things. It's actually a frame story. So the book starts near the end as she is coming back home. Her best friend comes over and asks what happened. And she says, well, to tell you that, I got to start at the beginning. And she goes back and tells her life story. And it's just beautiful. The dialogue is written in dialect, and that can turn some folks off. Let me give you some advice, teacher hat on. Read the dialogue out loud. It is written phonetically, so read it like you're sounding it out loud. Let your ear hear it, and it will work faster than you think, especially if you are an avid reader, that your brain will go, oh, I see what you're doing here, and you won't have a problem anymore, and you'll just hear it the way that Zora Neale Hurston intended. But it is a beautiful story about love and loss and love again and loss again and her whole life, and it's just lovely and wonderful. And if you have not read this, give it a shot. I promise, it's beautiful. My second romance, but it's not a romance, that I absolutely adore, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I love this book so much. I love this book so much. This is the first book where I finished it and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I'm walking around my house kind of hugging this book and petting it, and I couldn't put it down, and I was just lost because I loved everything about it. I did not want to leave this world. So it is a story of a Latina woman named Evelyn, whose last name at first isn't Hugo, and she dyes her hair and kind of passes as a white woman to get into Hollywood, and it all works. And so she builds this career, and throughout the career, the book follows her career through her love life. So we see who she falls in love with, we see who she doesn't fall in love with and yet is still kind of attached to. It really highlights the Hollywood system they had back then, where they were putting actors together and kind of fabricating personal lives as a way to publicize films and things like that, the whole studio thing. And it's just so good. It is so good. A lot of people call it historical fiction because it is set in a historical setting with imaginary characters, but then people get confused and think, was she really a star? And I didn't know who she was. Like, I want to go see her movies. She wasn't real. The setting and all of the Hollywood machine stuff, totally real, and so well written that she seems like a real live person. Not kidding, did go and try to find her IMDb so I could find her films and watch them. I was like, how did I, even though she's been retired for most of my life, how did I not know who she was? And then it turned out she was a character in a novel and not based on a real person. And That's some real good work. But romantically, we really get to watch her through love, through heartbreak, through pain, through all of it, and coming to terms with love and her own love, and it's just beautiful. I can't say that enough. It's just wonderful. I think any time of year is a great time for this book, but especially right here in February, in romance season. If you haven't read it or you're worried too many people like it so you won't, give it a shot. Don't let other people liking something turn you off. Like, it's really good. So the next category I kind of want to talk about is a fantasy novel with a very heavy romance base to it. And for this one, I decided to talk about Under the Whispering Door. So this is the story of a attorney who at the beginning of the book is kind of a jerk, and he has a heart attack and he dies. And you're like, Rose, how is that romantic? He never really he had been married, but he didn't really appreciate what he had. But then when he ends up at the way station where you go to emotionally divest from your life and get ready to go to the next, whatever is next for you, he meets someone named Hugo, who is the ferryman who helps people through that. And their love story is the most beautiful slow burn that I think I've ever read. It's wonderful because neither one are there for the purpose of love. It's not focused on that. And yet to watch them find each other in that way and to watch it grow and bloom together, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. And it's I don't even know what else to say. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It is very much about death. It is very much about grief. So we do have that love part, but there's a lot of grief in here. So it's not just a happy, yay, hey, they're falling in love. Like, there's a lot of heavy, there's a lot of sad, but it makes the love so much stronger. It gives it so much more gravitas. It makes you appreciate just those little and it makes you appreciate the little moments that they have, and makes you appreciate the little moments that you realize that you have that maybe you're not paying attention to. At least that's what it did for me. So this is absolutely wonderful. The romance in it is absolutely wonderful. And if you haven't read this and you can deal with a heavy and also beautifully romantic novel, Under the Whispering Door, I cannot more strongly recommend it. Okay, so 4 and 5 are going to be things that you find in the romance section of the bookstore. They are traditional romance books, but they're also not traditional. They're different. Again, you know how picky I am. And this is the book that after I read this, I was like, okay, from now on, because I'd never really spent much time in the romance section, I've talked before about how I don't care for romance that is based on sexual misconduct that goes unpunished. And I kept finding it, and I still keep finding it, and it bothers me. It bothers me to no end. I also don't like romance where someone's romantic life is like the center of their world, that they don't have a life outside of it. It's all about, will they love me? Won't they love me? How do I get them to love me? And I'm like, honey, love yourself. Can this author turn this into a honey, learning to love yourself? I keep beating on the arm of this chair, y'all, so I hope I don't make a bunch of noise. But anyway, I like romances where it's about a person and their life, and then there's also love. All of that to say, Emily Henry's Beach Read ticked every single box correctly, and is the reason I keep buying new romances, because I keep thinking, if this can be this good, then there's other things in this section of the bookstore, there's other things in this section of the library that are also going to be this strong, and I haven't found them yet. So this is the story of a young woman whose father has just passed. So again, we've got some heavy in here, and she comes to discover that he was not the man she thought he was. She comes to discover that her life was not what she thought it was, that her parents' marriage was not what she thought it was. And she is, the main character in here, is a romance writer. And so she is severely blocked now because everything she thought she knew and understood about love is a lie. And she doesn't know how to get herself and her life and her beliefs back on track and how to figure all of this out. And like the puzzle of who she is in her head is completely just been dumped on the floor. And how do we get those pieces up and put them together in whatever new way they need to be? So the romance part of it is that her college kind of rival, they were always 1 and 2 in their writing courses, and they were always kind of those kids, but it was more of a rivalry than it was a working together. But he is living next door to her. She's spending the summer at this beach house trying to write, and she can't, and she discovers that he is next door, and at first she's upset about it, but they end up kind of having a weird, tenuous, like, friendship at first, and he kind of talks smack about writing romance and chick lit, and she puts him in his place so many times. I think that's why I love her so much. But she really, like, why are the things that women do not as literary? Why are you saying this about an entire genre? Why is this bad because of the gender of the main primary reader? Like, she makes really brilliant points in here, and I loved that, and I was like cheering her on the whole way. So what ends up happening is they decide to trade genres. So she's gonna write gritty, heavy-hitting stuff that he normally writes, and he's gonna try to write a romance, and hoping, because they're both blocked, that this will at least get their wheels moving and get them out of their block. So hijinks ensue. It's so wonderful. It's so good. Again, it is a strong female lead who's been thrown some pretty, like, she wasn't just thrown curveballs. She kind of had that pitching machine just shooting, you know, balls at her for forever, and she's trying to recover from that, but she's still a super strong woman who has her own center. And then there is also a love interest in the novel, and that's what I love, and it's so good. So if you haven't read this one, or you've read some of the others where that's not kind of how the main character is, give this one a shot, because I think you will love it as much as I did. And for number 5, it's actually a series of romance novels. They are traditionally romance, and they are the Brown sister romances. They are Get a Life, Chloe Brown, Take a Hint, Dani Brown, and Act Your Age, Eve Brown. And yep, I've read the whole series. I wish there were more sisters, or there were more books about the sisters. These are all Talia Hibbert, and she is brilliant. One of the great things about these is that they are not traditional protagonists. This is a family of 3 sisters. They are women of color. In the first one, and they don't have to be read in this order, the sisters appear in each other's books, but more like cameos. So it might kind of tip you off as to what's going to happen in the others' books, but it's not big spoilers or anything like that. So you can read them in whatever order you're interested in them. I just read them in the publishing order. So Chloe Brown is a woman who has some really bad medical issues. Some days she's great, and some days she can barely get out of bed. And so she almost gets killed. She almost gets like hit by a car. And she realizes that her life isn't a life. She is surviving. She's not thriving. She's not accomplishing anything. Like, this is just a waste. And so she makes herself a list so that she can get a life. And on this list, she has, like, she wants to move out. Her family is fairly wealthy, and she's been living at home with them. So she moves out and she gets her own place. On this list is to fall in love. On this list is like to go on a motorcycle ride. There's all of these things on this list. And so our main plot is not romance. Our main plot is her trying to build a life that she is proud to be living, to build a life that she feels like is worth having a life for. But there's also a love interest, and his name is Reid, and he's great, and he's like an artist, and he rides a motorcycle, and so stuff and things, and at first they're kind of like oil and water, and they have trouble communicating, and then you kind of see them kind of come together. But again, her main goal isn't get a guy. Her main goal, her life doesn't revolve around this guy. She is building her life, and then he is trying to become part, well, they work on him becoming a part of her life, but he is not her goal. Her life goal isn't get a guy. Her life goal is get a life. And so this one, take a hint, Dani Brown, which is the sister's book. She also kind of needed to get a life, but I guess they couldn't do that with this one. So the sister is a professor, and she's super work focused. Like, I don't care about relationships. I don't care about all of these things. I'm just going to do work. And then she meets a guy, and this is a fake dating. They end up fake dating to benefit his charity. And so it totally makes sense why they would fake date. It's a social media thing. You know how that goes. And they end up falling. And again, she's got her life. She's trying to fix and work on her life. And then the love interest comes in. And then is Act Your Age, Eve Brown. And in this one, Eve is the youngest sister. She's always been a bit flighty and a bit non-committal because she's always had that safety net of home. And she decides that she's not going to go there anymore. Like, she's not going to rely on other people to take care of her. She is going to grow up, and she is going to get a real job, and she is going to take care of herself. And she ends up having great talents, and she's good at a lot of things that she didn't realize like could matter. And she's wonderful. And again, so she is working on herself, and then there's also a love interest. And all three of these are so good, and I love them. I love spending time with them. They're light, they're easy, they're fun. It's been years. Like, you notice these were not on my TBR, like these were not on my 2023 wrap-ups, because it's been probably 2021 maybe when I read the last one. I'm pretty sure I read the first one pre-COVID. So I've read them a long time ago, and these characters are still with me. That's how well done they are. So if you have not read Talia Hibbert's Brown Sisters trilogy, give it a shot. Even if romance isn't normally your thing, they're fun, they're light, they're breezy, and they will put a smile on your face. So there you have it, my top 5 romance novels, but of course I couldn't keep it to 5. They aren't all necessarily romance novels. They are all about other things and have strong romance subplots or threads running through, and that made them lovely and so much fun and such a wonderful read to me. I want to say first, thank you so much. We went over 600 subscribers, and I adore you, and thank you to each, and I would say it 605 times if I thought you wouldn't click off before I got to the end. But thank you to each and every one of you. It means the world to me that you're enjoying what I'm doing here, and that maybe I'm brightening your day up just a little bit. So in the comments down below, if you could go ahead and tell me what your favorite romance, not romance novel is, if you've got one. And also, if you have not yet subscribed, I would love it if you would just hit that button and then hit those notifications. I've got my wrap up for February, and oh my goodness, I've got some amazing books that I have already read, and I know you want to hear about it. So hit that button, hit that subscribe, and in the meantime, I hope that you have an absolutely amazing week and that you get to read some really amazing books. Bye, y'all.